so I was kind of thinking about this idea of clairvoyance or fortune telling, or which also is related in some ways, I think, about my work. So then I was kind of thinking of like other words that relate to that, and I thought of Seers, and then I just had this kind of realization that it also sounded like Seers, like Sears Robot, which also kind of works because I was thinking, like there's kind of a, kind of cobbled together kind of Sears aesthetic, I think, that manifests in different ways in both of our work. So I think I sent a text to you that was like just Seers /Seers, and then I think you added the Craftsmen part.
Yeah.
Because Seers Craftsmen.
That's like the major tool brand or whatever. Yeah. And I did kind of like, I think it's a generational thing too. Like, probably grew up spending time in Sears like I did.
Absolutely.
And having Craftsman tools, and there's also this sort of like kind of, what's the right word? When I think of Sears, I think of this kind of lower cultural or sort of basic, like flatline cultural things, which I think we both sort of reference in our work. It's like you're probably not going to get pummeled with art speak in this talk,
right?
We'll see. So sometimes I feel like my work could be more closer to Sears, the store, than I don't know, some other.
But then it also describes both artists. We're Seers and Craftsmen,
which might be a bit of a stretch. But
there's so many layers.
And the part I like about that is I don't feel entirely comfortable with either of those labels, which somehow makes it feel better for me as a title as well.
Yeah. In some ways, there's something pretty like muckety-muck or kind of conservative about the Craftsman. It's sort of not a term I'm entirely comfortable with, and I don't believe in fortune telling, or it's a little I don't know, pretentious in a way, right? To label yourself in that way. So this definitely, but it's kind of a joke too, right? Because it's Seers Craftsman. So it takes it down a peg.
In terms of media, I guess, what I'm showing pencil drawings as well as ink drawings, and then a few other things with spatterings of like minimal color of all different material. And the choice of media is really utilitarian. I think I've always worked in a more direct way, but I've gotten more direct since having kids, and because the amount of time I've had has been compressed. So I've sort of, how do I say this? In a way, I care less about what anyone thinks about what I'm doing. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but since I've been making, I pretty much draw obsessively, and since having kids, I do a lot of these drawings more in private and more on like a smaller scale. And so I don't really think about, how they'll exist in exhibition and stuff, and I found that the work is much freer than I've ever been. And so I like that. And I guess in terms of addressing the media part, the ink drawings are great because you have to trust everything, and you either have to run it into the ground or it works. Like there's no in between, and I like that because I like to work really fast, and I work with a lot of I think I'm always going like there's a lot of energy, I guess, and like anxiousness probably in the work, and so ink really lends itself to that. And what doesn't lend itself to ink is drawing around kids or drawing in the living room on the couch or something, and then you get in trouble sometimes. But so I always hated pencil drawing, and I always thought it was too fussy, and I hate things that you can refine to death, and because that'll be my tendency, I'll just do something, erase it, or like with a oil painting, and you paint over something 50 times. till it's like devoid of anything, like that obsessive. That in that way, like my obsessive ways of working can sometimes count against me. But so how I started to learn how to make pencil drawings is I would put, when my son, who's 5 now, I guess is like 1, I'd put him to sleep on my lap on the couch, and I sort of just sit there and I'd draw in really low light with pencil whatever I could see around me, and so basically like a year of just putting him in bed on my lap and like making a drawing for an hour in pencil in low light. I ended up with this sort of stack of drawings, and I started to understand pencil a little bit better and trust it. And I think because it was low light too, I couldn't like erase, because erasing's too aggressive when there's a kid sleeping. When there's a kid, a pillow, and a drawing, so like, you can't erase. So that it was like that gave me the freedom to use pencil, because I couldn't be fussy, because I could barely see it. And I couldn't erase. And since then, I've really enjoyed like the different qualities of working with pencil. So it kind of back and forth. It's like a different feeling. And you know, some of the pencil drawings are like you're sitting on the couch late at night, kids are asleep, watching not a movie usually, watching a show with my wife, and like I can't just sit there and watch usually. I need to be doing something. So pencil drawing is really nice for that as well. And then you're lifting. And then, yeah, so I'm always, you know, pencil is great because it's utilitarian. You're, wherever you are, you can get a pencil and a piece of paper. So.
You know, the work that I've been making for the last several years are all drawings, and I consider these drawings as well. So you can call them paintings if you want to, but I mean, the way I think about them, the process, it's, you know, as far as I'm concerned, they're drawings. And, you know, so there's an aspect of drawing where, you know, much like grabbing a pencil and you do something with it, right? A lot of it sort of feels to me like, you know, you just grab a material, and then it's about kind of working out whatever idea, whatever thing you want to do with that material, not necessarily, I don't know, making lots of, like, I don't want to make lots of choices about materials or something like that. I don't know, I just want to like grab a thing and then work out whatever problem I want to work out. And so I started using, you know, watercolor. One of the things I really like about it is the way it related to kind of my process of looking and observing. Because all of these drawings have some aspect of like, there was a thing and it was in front of me, and I, you know, observed it in various ways and, you know, made the image. And I liked how using watercolor really required me to do that in a very deliberate way, because you know, it's a little bit more like my old work, I would kind of do something like a ballpoint pen or something, and then it's just a matter of you just kind of keep going, you keep motoring, and you know, eventually you'll sort of, you make little adjustments through lots and lots of marks, and eventually you get there. But with watercolor, you know, it's almost more like a chess match or something. You know, I have to kind of like sit there and look for a while, and then sort of think about like, okay, what am I going to do next? You know, and because, you know, you can kind of like screw it up, right? And you can kind of, you know, go back some, but you don't really want to. So, you know, a lot of times, sometimes I'll just kind of sit there like looking at something for 15, 20 minutes, and, you know, before I'll finally just like kind of make a move and lay down some wash, and then I gotta wait for it to dry, and then I'm just kind of looking again a little bit longer, and it's just that kind of a real kind of plotting, you know, that I think, you know, it enhances that process of doing like a lot of really intense looking and kind of thinking about the subject. And so it kind of, I like that, the way those two reinforce each other. And I would say for me, the kind of the genesis of the idea is fast. You know, it's sort of something that kind of just comes all at once, it hits all at once, this is what I'm going to do, I know what I'm going to do. And like, I don't kind of, I mean, and they might change, but from that initial germ, it's like, I kind of have to have a sense of the entirety of what I want to do, because if there's things if there's parts of the space or something I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it, it almost never really works out very well, you know. It's because I'm kind of, it ends up being filler or something. So So that kind of happens all at once. And then it's the process of kind of, setting something up or making a setup and then actually stretching the paper and, working out the composition, doing the drawing. It's a still life drawing, and then just all of the steps with the watercolor. Yeah, that part's pretty slow. Yeah. But lots of little decisions and changes get made along the way, and I kind of like that slowness that kind of gives that space to kind of make all those little changes and decisions. My education essentially was all in printmaking, and one of the essential elements of printmaking is that delay. You kind of set up for something to happen, and then you run it through the machine, and then you see what you got. There's always lots of steps in the process. So I find that that's productive for me to have lots of steps. So that part's slow.
Okay, yeah, you asked about initially when you look at the work, you can feel the fast part, and then where's the hidden, is there anything hidden that's really slow in making the work? And there's a few things, and I think slow is something I fight against all the time, because I lose something when I let slow get to me. Slow feels really good and comfortable, especially especially when it's relaxing. And so there's moments where I find something slow, and it's like listening to like a Murakami audio book or something. It's just like really like kind of like relaxes you and feels really good. And that happens quite a bit in my drawing, and almost always when it does happen, I like the feeling of making it, but nobody ever gets to see it because I don't like what happened. And I don't think there's anything that I let slow get too much of an upper hand on in here. There's moments in some of the pencil drawings, and some of the slow moments in the pencil drawings are good. But in looking at them, I don't know if some of the fastest ones might still be better. I don't know. But so I think about that. There's some that are like that at least nod towards rendering. And so it goes in waves. But the other thing that's slow for me is trying to make things look fast. And that's not exactly accurate. The thing that's slow for me is sometimes I get something that I would like in an ink drawing that's working, but then I have to make the ink drawing 15 times. And then there's one that I really like, and then the other ones go away. So maybe not slow, but there's a lot more hidden labor, I guess. I get rid of more than I keep, I guess. If that makes sense. But it has to look easy.
Do you find you work to kind of maintain a sense of urgency while you're working on these? Like it's, it sounds like you can't relax too much.
I think that when it hits the best to me, there's like an urgency, or there's a certain, but it can, sometimes it can feel like really good by the time you're done, like you just worked out or something, but it's like a mental workout. You feel like it's kind of, then you feel the relaxing sort of slowness of it, or but when I'm feeling that while making, it's usually not a winner. But you can see it in the pencil drawings the most, the ones where there's like thematically there's this in a lot of them there's sort of a table where something starts, right? And I think that happened as well. That sort of motif started when I was drawing, and I could, I'm in the house, I could see a table, and then you can put things on the table, right? So it's just like a real obvious tool to get started on a drawing, and also you're sort of missing these group things, which has started with young kids and then continued through COVID and all this. So it's so that's where it started. And some of the tables are some of the spaces that are much more of a environment, and some are just like floating, and there's not, you don't get the overall feel of the space. I think once you start to put the space in, it feels, maybe slow is the wrong word, but it feels like more comforting, or you can enter the space easier because you understand the walls and the floor and stuff. And other times it's just like things floating in space a little bit more.
Yeah, I have a studio. It's in the basement of my house. It actually used to be a garage. I used to have a subterranean garage, or the house did. It's gone long before we bought the place. And so it's kind of nice because it's kind of partitioned off from the rest of the basement. And I usually want to control the light down there, so I have the basement windows covered up, and so it's kind of a dark underground bunker. And I've got a big 4x8 table, and where I usually do most of the work. So I usually have something taped down flat on that surface, and you can definitely see a lot of this of these drawings are made out of junk that was probably down there. Just that's what you're looking at, that's what you see, and so you grab it, you use it, or something strikes you as interesting about it. Other times, so like this dresser is, the dresser in my bedroom, so that was up 2 floors. So it was kind of a process of like running up and down a lot, so I'd kind of like run up and make some drawings on site, and then kind of run downstairs and do something down there on the paper for a while, and then like run up and maybe take some measurements, maybe bring the mirror downstairs, so I can use that reference. And but it always kind of it all happens in the basement, right? Because that's the only space that I can set up and work in that way. It's often the atmosphere that inspires the drawing in the first place, so whether that's something I encounter or whether that's something I set up. So this kind of window thing is a familiar sort of thing that I encounter daily, but it has a certain kind of atmosphere, I guess, of kind of that sort of feeling, kind of being like inside looking out, and whatever kinds of associations you might have with that. It's really focused on like the aluminum storm windows, just kind of a very familiar thing you don't really think about, but you have a specific relationship with, I guess. And the sort of veiled aspect of looking through the screen. So that was something just that I happened to experience in a certain way, and so I wanted to make it into a drawing, and just kind of tried to kind of capture that. But then others, with this one, I was maybe looking for kind of like a science fiction paperback kind of a book cover kind of an idea. And so really was just about like setting up lights to get kind of the right kind of, I don't know, sort of mysterious, pseudoscientific kind of spacey kind of look.
It definitely affects what I put out in a multitude of ways, generally because I take what's around me and that enters the drawing. And when I'm looking up at these walls, it's a little bit shocking how much I can remember of where I was in making a lot of the drawings. And so I've made some of them, I can see, like right now I'm looking, I can see one I made in a doctor's office. I can see one that I made on a beach. I can see ones I made on our back porch. And a lot of these happened on the couch. A lot of the ink drawings, those happened, a lot of them in an Airbnb. We were living in Airbnb for like 4 months. And I started buying these like metal tins, like these white tins with a blue stripe on the top, and I just kind of keep different drawing papers and materials in the tin, and then I just take that tin around the house, whether it's on the floor with the kids, and I'll just draw in that. So everything stays in its own little modular units, but those go everywhere. They go to the couch, they go to the floor a lot, or outside, and then I also have a studio as well that's a part of our house. It's like a split level house, so one level my wife and I have studios on, and in there you know, bigger things happen, and I also like pin things up to the wall, and like some of the ink drawings are done on a wall as well. And sometimes with a paintbrush, sometimes with other like blunt sign makers tools that are like, I guess like not calligraphy, but I think these metal things for making like larger ink signs. And and usually when I'm making things, there's a lot of stuff around me. Like I try to spread out what I've done before and sort of ripping off what I just did sometimes, or like, you know, taking influence from a past drawing as well as, you know, whatever the toy is, or, you know, as I'm looking there, like some new movies out, Sing 2, like that character is from that. You can't tell, but this like victorious thing with the big ears is loosely based on that koala. I don't know. So it's like whatever's around it happens. I could see like, yeah. I'm not. So I guess I'm talking more about where the influences can come from, and that's been a real. I've sort of, with these drawings, I abandoned any sort of kind of ideological thinking or any sort of everything's on the table, and I work with whatever comes at me, and that's been really freeing and really great to just keep up that energy. And a lot of times, you know, I'll be drawing next to the kids, and they'll do something, and I'll copy them, and then I'll do something, and they'll copy me, or whatever. And that's also leads to some new discoveries for me, or new ways of thinking about working. And yeah.